Hey guys, what's up? It's Ellie here. We can all agree that Dishonored's art style is unique and very visually appealing. A reason for this is that Arcane Studios has specifically looked to work with artists within the field of paintings and sculptures. The character creation process is as detailed as contracting artists to mold several physical clay busts. These busts were actually put on display in a museum exhibit dedicated to video games that were inspired by French art, alongside other paintings that featured characters in the game. Arcane Studios recently released some concept art from the game, so let's take a look. Looking at this piece of concept art, we can already see a difference in the representation of Karnataka and Dunwall. We can observe this in the clothes being worn, which are definitely quite different to anything seen in Dunwall. We can also observe the clothing of the guards. The short sleeves and lighter colours show that we are definitely in a warmer climate. The buildings in the background are also flat roofed and are close together. They're also tiered, which gives the impression of perhaps Greece, or Italy, or Spain. So basically we're definitely getting a Southeast Europe vibe. In this image we can see a large building. The style of this building absolutely screams European. The guard standing in front of the building is wearing a different uniform to that of the previous guards. Perhaps it's a little colder in this part of Karnataka. Observing the weather in the last image as well as this one, we can see that the weather is a lot different to that of the weather seen in the trailer. We also saw wind turbines in the previous image as well as the trailer. So with all of this information in mind, we probably don't always get the most peaceful weather. The big question here is about the weather system in Dishonored 2. Will it storm or rain as we play through a level as it did in the first game? And if so, will it rain the whole level or will it be periodic? In an article featured by PC Gamer, a journalist commented on a mission they watched from the game itself. The mission took place in the Dust District, a poor area of Karnataka in the shadow of a mountain cleft called the Wind Corridor, which is covered in a thick silt from the excessive waste of the silver mines that are funneled out over the city. They mention that every so often a horn heralds a dust storm that then blows through the district, which obscures sight and sound for a few moments. So although we don't have information on how storms and rainy, windy weather will come into play within the game, we know that dust storms will be an occurring thing in some areas, which will allow for stealthier kills. We now get a look at the Dreadful Whale, the new hub for Blaze to return to after each mission. In the previous game, the hub was the Hound Pits pub, a drinking establishment used as headquarters for the Loyalists. Just like the previous hub, the player will have their own room as well as more narrative beats to explore. For example, visiting the engine room powered by whale oil, the player can head in and observe the mechanics of how the ship works. This concept art shows us a little of Emily's ability Far Reach, showcasing how the power can be used for assassinating distant enemies by pulling the enemy closer to perform a melee attack. I talk more about Emily's powers in a previous video, so go check that out if you're interested. Though the rat plague is over in Dunwall, Karnataka is fighting their own battles and is under attack by a massive bloodfly infestation. This poster addresses the issue and lists protocols in relation to dealing with the infected, dead or alive. Posters like these will be scattered around the city. In this concept art, we see more of what these bloodflies actually are and what they're capable of. We saw a little bit of this in the trailer, where Emily runs past a body that has been turned into a hive for the bloodflies. In the game, the more dead you leave behind, the higher the bloodfly population grows. But will small hubs like this already pre-exist for the bloodflies in-game? And are we able to destroy these hubs? Or will they appear depending on chaos levels? Taking a closer look at this image, to the left of the building we see graffiti. It reads, "Howlers come at night." So what are these howlers? Well, howlers are actually one of the new factions we'll be encountering, run by a man named Paolo. Pulling up another piece of concept art, we see a swarm of bloodflies flying towards a man, although it's quite possible that this is Karnataka's equivalent to Dunwall's Weepers. This here is an Ark Pylon, a defensive and lethal turret that can disintegrate anyone within a certain range if they are not considered an ally. It looks a little different to the ones in the first game, and even has a splash of red that seems to be a slight theme in the city of Karnataka. If you read some of the books and notes found scattered around Dunwall, you'll know that Folktale is a very big part of the culture, and is also exhibited in Karnataka with this painting, which is a featured artwork that can be found in-game by the player. Though this image doesn't depict any particular scenes in the game, is it possible that whales are not the only massive creatures in the sea? We can all recognise this spacey concept piece as the Void, an alternate dimension where the godlike divine entity that is the Outsider resides. We visit the Void as Corvo in the previous game, where he is given the mark of the Outsider. So will there be a similar sequence to Emily in Dishonored 2? And is that Emily herself in the concept art? Either way, I cannot wait to explore the emptiness of the Void once again. We also have some concept art representing the life in Karnataka separate to the Duke and his men. This street scene here shows some men possibly gambling, and a man playing the piano in the background surrounded by onlookers. As Harvey Smith confirmed in a recent interview, there will be much more civilian life on the streets of Karnataka, whether it be people fishing, having lunch, or as represented in this concept art, congregating like so. In the trailer, Emily carries a crossbow that varies somewhat from Corvo's, but in this concept art, we see that there may be a bunch of different variations to that crossbow. Perhaps the weapon changes as we upgrade it. Regardless, they all look super cool. In this image, we can see what I can only assume to be various different bolts for the crossbow weapon. We can see that each bolt has a letter, however, there was no legend to refer them to. As well as this, the bottom right bolt does not have a letter, but it is the only bolt in colour. This bolt is pretty recognisable by the green colour and is the sleep dart from the previous game. Both bolts under the letter C are quite similar with minor differences, so perhaps the first bolt has a different effect that might be potentially lethal instead. Also, in the previous game, we only had 3 different bolts to use, and in this image there are a total of 6. B looking like the incendiary bolt or explosive bolt. There are still 4 others that are shown. I'm super curious to see what new ammunition we have for the weapon. Last but certainly not least, we have the wonderful released concept art of our 2 protagonists, Corvo Atano and Emily Coldwin. You can see the dramatic changes in both characters from over the past 15 years. Emily is no longer a 10-year-old girl but a 25-year-old young woman, and Corvo is no longer 39 but is 54. The sleek, polished look definitely stemming from their royal status in Dunwall after the events of the first game. And they both look absolutely badass. So that's it for the video. Please leave it a like if you enjoyed, let me know your speculations in the comments below, links to my social media below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to catch more of my Dishonored 2 content. Bye!